Let's call the committee of the whole to order. Tuesday, January the 25th, 2005, right at 6 o'clock p.m. Councilwoman Wallman is present, Councilwoman Garner, Vice Mayor Bell, Councilman Hodge, and Councilman Losman. First item is the approval of the Committee of the Whole, Finance, Public Safety, Community Development Committee meeting minutes of December 14, 2004. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Moved by Councilwoman Garner, second by the Vice Mayor. Any comments? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Special events, grant funds resolution. Maureen?
Mayor and Council, you had inquired a couple meetings ago about reinstituting our special events grant fund. Previously, by Ordinance 9607-31, we had allocated certain dollars to establish a special events grant. How this will work, well, each council person will nominate a person to sit on the board. It will be a board of 7. They will review applications from various 501c3 entities for funding that will enhance the city, i.e. special events that will benefit the residents, businesses, and visitors of Homestead. And we would like your concurrence in reestablishing this. We've requested $20,000 for this fiscal year to be transferred from contingency to a specific account for this issue.
Question.
Vice Mayor?
Marlene, is this similar to, I had made a very similar request about 6 months ago that we have some type of review over expenditures as people kind of just hit us up for funding, and that there should be some type. Is this in reaction to that as well? Because I was looking for something months ago on this.
Yes, ma'am. This is very similar to that. It was very successful in the past when we had the committee set up and various entities came forward and they filled in their application and a sample is attached. And the committee made recommendations. That recommendations moved forward to council in the form of a greenie, and you either blessed it or had questions or you denied any of the applications.
Mr. Mayor? Mr. Lawson?
If I might, Marlene, let me clarify, because I think, I don't know if the distinction's been made between how I think the fund was administered in the past and what the Vice Mayor was really asking. And my perception, and that's from working on Main Street with the Military Affairs Committee and so forth, is that we helped underwrite the police, security, insurance expenses of parades and events for not-for-profits out of this fund. Typically, that's what happened in the past. Maybe helped provide funding for, just for groups to put on events.
Councilman Losner, yes, that is correct. There was the fishing league, the various groups that came forward had parades. But now the parades, we're keeping that separate. That is not in this special events because we fund the Veterans Day Parade, the Martin Luther King Parade, and the Rodeo Parade. We donate to them a certain amount of money every year, which we've done for a couple years now.
But
this is separate.
Those parades came out of this fund?
In some small way, yes, they did.
Not to any great magnitude.
No.
I know that just the cost of police and the insurance has increased dramatically, but I think what the concern is when a group comes to the city and says, just be one of our sponsors or buy a table's worth of tickets. Is that what this fund is for?
No, sir. No, sir, not at all.
That's an important distinction.
I mean, I can give you some examples even of what was done in the past and what was approved that came before council. I mentioned the fishing. Mr. Porco used to have a fishing group for kids. And
they still do.
Yes, they still do. Okay. And they came forward. I believe some groups, I'm just here, there was the Mexican-American Council for their Cinco de Mayo Festival had come forward. The Antique Federation had come forward. Let's see, there was Fish and Game Unlimited they came forward and were granted dollars. So it was a lot of different entities, Hot Roads, that requested funding from the city. And the max that they could request is $2,500, and the committee themselves determined from the application what are the kind of funding they were getting, what grants they had received, and what they could afford to fund for this particular grant.
Well, I guess, and what in the past did it was our money earmarked for?
I'm sorry, what was that?
I guess when the fund was in place in the past, it was generally earmarked for what kind of expense? I mean, we just didn't say, here's a sponsor
No.
$500.
No, they had to list on the application, what their expenses were, so it could have been advertising, it could have been newscasts, it could have been security, it could have been their banners, it could have been their insurance, it could have been some funding that they did not have enough money to cover that expense.
Okay.
And, I mean, it ran anywhere from $150 that the committee granted to, $2,000, $2,500.
Okay, thank you, Marlene. That's all, Mayor.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. So then this really is different than my original request, because my original request came out of a concern more for many organizations, us buying the table to just basically everything and anything. And that, and of course, I mean, there are many organizations that we support that also support us that absolutely we should, the Red Cross and things like that, and I understand that, but
that's different.
My concern was for other outside organizations that are always hitting us up for tables.
There were, organizations that came forward, like some of the church groups had special, Black History Celebration Month or a Christian Fest, and, they came before the committee and they were granted dollars too for their particular activity. What you're talking about is like the Red Cross Ball, the Pineapple Ball. That's not...
I don't have a problem with those. I really wasn't referring to those specifically. I wasn't referring to I don't want to be specific here and start naming.
No.
But I wasn't referring to those that benefit the community as well as, we benefit them. I was referring to so many different tables that we're constantly, buying. I was just curious as to how we were going to manage that. It's just going to keep on kind of being the way it's been then.
Well, really, for those type of entities, they should really come forward before the special events and request funds. That's why this is being reestablished, so all those smaller groups that come forward and ask for funding, this will be an avenue for them to pursue funding.
Okay, thank you.
Marlene, I support the reinstatement of the special event, but I just have a concern about reinstating it during this fiscal year. It was my intent to reinstate it in the new budget year. So I'm open for council indulgence on it, but I don't see the necessity of moving $20,000 from contingency for reinstating special event in mid-year. So that's just normally do it in the case of an emergency of some sort, but I don't consider this an emergency, so I would think that if we're going to do it, we need to do it during the time that you have the budget process and council approval, a portion for the reinstatement of the special event. So is there some necessity to do it right now?
Mayor Warren, we brought this forward because there was a question at one of the CAL meetings that we look into reinstituting this. So, I mean, we could wait till we go through the budget.
I support doing it, but
we could wait till the budget.
It's not an emergency. I just don't see doing a budget amendment or moving monies from contingency just to do it right now.
Mr. Mayor.
I was going to say, basically, this is monies, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is monies we're pretty much spending anyway. We're just going to go ahead and lock it in, that this is the cap, and there's now a process to go through rather than just coming to council. Yes, no?
Well, it could be. I don't know that we're necessarily spending $20,000 right now. I mean, on requests.
Right, that's
yes,
the cap.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I was the one that really brought the request to Marlene and the city manager to reinstate it. However, I wasn't expecting it this quick. But, you know,
Next budget year.
yeah, exactly. I do appreciate Marlene and her due diligence in bringing this forth to us, but I do respect your opinion of bringing it back at the initial of the beginning of the next coming budget year. And that way, maybe if there's any future changes or things, we have time to plan it out and bring it, because the next budget year is only basically 6-7 months away. So.
Mr. Shahada?
Mr. Mayor, council members, this was really something we discussed during the budgeting process, and we included in the city manager's contingency. This is not from the general fund contingency. This is city manager's contingency, and it will not affect the bottom line of the budget. So if it's your wish to just keep it as a contingency and include it in next year's budget, we could do that, but this was really foreseen and to be done this way.
Any other comments, Ms. Roman?
Yes, I was approached by Gary Ferguson with the Empowerment Trust Zone, and he had asked me, and I was so glad that Councilman Hodge brought it up, but he had asked me to think about reinstating the special fund. I personally think it's a really good idea. I don't know if everybody knows the specifics of it, but they would have a committee that they would go before, and each council person would select one member of the community to be a representative on the committee, and they would go before the committee, and then the committee would bring it to council. So council would ultimately have the bottom line vote anyway. Am I reading that right?
That's correct.
Marlene? So council would ultimately have the bottom line vote. I just have a problem, and maybe because I'm into so many events and so many things going on, that people approach me all the time to give them money for this, to write a check for that. I mean, I even have little baseball players, little 8-year-old baseball players writing me notes, and Patty can tell you this, asking for donations, and I think it would be wise, Mayor, if it's already in the budget and it's not going to hurt us any, that we might want to consider it, because everybody and his brother asked the city to sponsor something. And I think it's much better for the committee to be the one to determine what is the most important event or project that should be brought forward. I have a problem sometimes with so many people asking for money who do nothing to help themselves. And I mean that by, I have a lot of people groups that'll call me, and I'll say, well, when's your next car wash, or when's your bake sale? I'll be there. Oh, no, we're not doing that. We're looking for checks. We just want you to write us a check. So I have a real problem with that, and I'd really much rather have a committee selected from this council to make those decisions and then bring forth the projects that they felt are necessary for the city to back.
Any other comments?
Well, Mayor,
Mr. Losman?
since we are just about halfway through the budget year, and we will be by the time this we're up and running, if we were to adopt it for the balance of this year, I would suggest that $10,000 would be the appropriate amount to do a half a year. I mean, I'm assuming that since October 1, you've already had several requests that have eaten into that amount that's been set aside. And I know the parades are a separate issue, and most of the major parades for the budget year have all passed, with the exception of the rodeo parade that's already taken care of.
If it's budget, I was not aware that it was budgeted, so that's, when you bring it up mid-year, I have a concern, but if it's budgeted, I don't have a problem with Mr. Lawson's suggestion that we use 10,000 of the 20 that was budgeted, but I was not aware it was budgeted.
I mean, or if they can tell us that only 8 of the 20 has been utilized, let's find a balance of that conceptual amount and fund that for the balance of this year.
Mr. Mayor, Council Member, I repeat what the chief once said, your wish is our command, so we make it $10,000.
Is there a motion to implement the special event with $10,000 for the remainder of the fiscal year?
So moved.
Moved by the Vice President, second.
Second, Mayor.
Second by Councilwoman Wallman. No further discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Just be mindful, you need to bring names forward at some point to reinstate the committee. Homestead Brownfield Redevelopment Area Resolution, move coming forth from Hero. Seems so long ago.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, this item will be deferred, uplifted to next two council meetings for adoption of a resolution. Did I say it right, Marlene? And for public hearing.
Okay, thank you. Property at 35 Northwest First Street and resolution. Move approval by Councilman Losner. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Hodge. Another item from Hero. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 5 is ordinance amending Chapter 2 purchasing limitations.
Mr. Mayor, council member, this is a resolution. We have an ordinance for certain limits for the city manager in certain circumstances. David will be talking to you about it. And
Thank you. We drafted this ordinance at the request of the city administration, and it basically constitutes an update of the city purchasing requirements. One of the things that it does is it expands the city manager's purchasing authority. Right now, the city manager can purchase items up to an amount of $10,000. This, if adopted by the council, would enable the manager to purchase items up to $25,000. This is the first revision that's been made of this ordinance in the last few years, and it's a logical update of the manager's authority as to the purchasing amounts if the council finds suitable to increase that. Other components of this is that it raises the threshold for simplified purchasing procedures. Right now, a quotation system is used for items that are above the $10,000 amount, but range to $15,000. Those are a simple quotation procedure. If this proposed ordinance is adopted, that range would be raised from the area of $25,000 up to $35,000. A simple quotation procedure would be used for the purchase of supplies and items, whereas under this proposed ordinance, if a item or service is over $35,000 and is to be purchased, a normal formal bidding procedure would be utilized. Under our existing ordinance, we have a procedure now where if an emergency occurs that affects the water, sewer, or electric utility, the manager can expend money up to $50,000, which with certain safeguards whereby the manager brings the item to the next committee of the whole or council meeting, whichever occurs first. Under this proposed ordinance, the manager would be able to expend money up to $150,000 for water, sewer, and electric utility emergencies upon filing notification in the purchasing director office and the mayor's office within like a 2-day period, and then bringing the matter to the committee of the whole. And it also, for the first time, creates a mechanism for emergency purchases authority by the manager for non-electric water or sewer items, for other items that might come up with the city. For example, if a safety guardrail was knocked down and immediately needed to be put up without time for normal bidding procedures, it would allow the manager to go up to $50,000 for those types of items. Or if there was some emergency where the city would be in breach of an agreement unless action was taken to quickly purchase supplies, materials, or services, likewise the manager could go up to $50,000, once again having to bring the item to the next COW or council meeting and file a report promptly in the office of the mayor and the office of the purchasing director. So we think, subject to the council's discretion, we think this is a logical enhancement of the authorities and approvals process under the purchasing ordinance. Additionally, this clarifies some of the existing provisions on local preferences, doesn't change the substance of them, just clarifies them to conform to what's already been the practice in the city, where certain preferences are given for local businesses. I'd be happy to answer any questions on this. I think I've covered the main components of this.
Mr. Mayor, council members, if you allow me to speak, we think, representing the city manager, we think this is a flexibility the city manager really needs to have, and I promise you, this is approved. It's going to reduce the number of meetings and the items we bring for discussion. Some of them will come for information only, but now we are coming to you with so many items for very small amounts of money. And actually, I have an item I want to bring to your attention, which was an emergency situation we had to deal with. There was a guardrail and a road, Maury Drive, under our jurisdiction. Somebody hit it, and under the existing code, the city manager is allowed to spend $10,000, but this exceeded by $444. But due to the situation, the city manager went ahead and allowed the purchase order to be processed, and bringing it to your attention, that was one of these emergencies where the city manager needs to handle. So we really like your support if you don't see a problem with that.
Well, historically, we have kept it, at one point it was $5,000. We went to $10,000, and there's some logic behind it. Now you're asking for $25,000. What does the council think? Well, one thing I'd ask, we need to run this by the internal auditors. I'd like to get the input on it, but Mr. Lawson, you have something? And I don't know if you've done a cost-benefit analysis to...
Yeah, and I sat in that audience for the year after Andrew, while you all were up here week after week after week grappling and dealing with that limitation. And it does, at first thought and thinking about it from the other side of this table, it's a long step from 5 or 10 to 25. But I know that Mr. O'Connor and I and Mr. Ivy and I have had conversations that, let me give you a real world example with the new growth and the new utility hookups that we have. The transformers that we require are now at the threshold of exceeding the ability to go out and buy them, and that creates delay in allowing the purchase and installation of these neighborhood transformers. And it's even been demonstrated to me that at the pace of our growth, without this increase in authorization, it could, just by virtue of the workload of purchase orders, could require the necessity to hire additional people to keep up with the paperwork that's required on purchase orders through the whole process. And it is a long step, a big step up from that 10 to the 25, but I don't think our limitations have kept pace with the marketplace when we're in the growth mode that we're in, and that's why I tend to be more supportive of this, just because we've probably always been very, very conservative, and with the growth, the price of utility type and construction type materials, it could be a crushing burden to continue to operate without this enhanced cap.
Just on the council side, I'd like to see something with some oversight, even if it's just acknowledging the chair of different areas dealing with these issues. With utility, and just some courtesy to the chair to know that from our level there's some oversight.
Just so we're not surprised as some of you were several years ago.
Yeah, that's just my hesitation. It's all.
That's Barbara, and we will inform each chairman, when it's up to their area.
And perhaps split the difference, and at the first level there's anything more than $15,000, just kind of keep us informed of what's going on.
I think that will, Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I would really agree with Councilman Losner. I think that it's very necessary. And of course, we have a caveat of emergency situations, and I think that's the safeguard, is the fact that it is emergency situations. It's not for customary normal spending, and then it would go immediately to the next committee of the whole along with it. So I think the safeguards are built right in with the ordinance, so I would absolutely support it, and I will move it.
Moved by the Vice Mayor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Warman.
Well, again, Mayor, I would concur with you. Let's run this by the auditors and get their input before we have final action on
Final
it.
action.
Mr. Mayor, council members, I'd like to request to add something else to the electric, water, and sewer under emergency to include solid waste. There were situations where we needed to purchase a vehicle, and you call them and they will have a vehicle ready to go, and you have to give a commitment practically that same day, and if you miss it, you have to wait for 6 months to get the vehicle.
You mean where two burned up in one day?
Mayor, can I ask a question?
That's appropriate. Ms. Warman?
Yes, that brings me to a question I wanted to ask you, Michael. the wording, it says the city's water, sewer, or electric utilities, and then the second line is the furnishing of other city services or the performance of other city functions or responsibilities. That's on page 7. And I had marked it with question marks.
Right, the way it works is that the $50,000 cap would apply to other city services or functions or responsibilities, whereas the $150,000 would apply to the water, sewer, and electric utility. If you determine to add the solid waste to that, then the $150,000 would apply to the water, sewer, electric, and solid waste. Otherwise, the $50,000 cap would apply to the solid waste. On the paragraph B there's a phrase that I've added to the ordinance, but it's not in the document in front of you tonight. On paragraph B, where it says city water, sewer, electric utilities, it has additional phrase, or for other purposes as specified below. That's to clarify the point that you're making, although I didn't know you were going to make it. I just need to clarify that $50,000 applies to the other services and $150,000 applies to the water, sewer, electric.
I'm sorry about that. I tend to dissect things a little bit more than maybe I should, but I just want a clarification on that. And also the 5%, just so, I mean, since it's in front of us and it's a public document, I just wanted to make sure I understood that on page 3. It says there shall be a 5% local preference given to local businesses who are holders of current city business license for businesses, and then we have underlined, which is the change, which are physically located within the city limits. I like that. Just wanted to tell you I like that.
Any other comments?
Mayor?
Yes.
If I could, please. Mayor and Council, we also included in here a survey in regards to, we obtained through National Government Purchasing Institution, NIGP, and of the 594 that they actually did poll, 170 responded, and 28.6% of those were at the threshold of $25,000. So keeping with today's standards and economy of scale, this is our recommendation.
How do we compare with some of the local ones? Do you have any stats? What's the county? You know,
The county has, they have different levels. They have set-asides for minorities. They also have a set-asides for local preferences inside of different areas, pooling for public works in different areas inside of that districts. So we actually do observe for local preferences, and we strongly promote that as far as that goes.
That's good. Thank you, sir. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item 6 is the Office of Economic Adjustment grant for the joint land use study.
Move it. Second.
Moved by the Vice Mayor, second by Councilwoman Garner. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mayor, you were too quick for me, but I just wanted to make one point. Charles, I sure hope that we do stay on this time frame.
I do too.
You know, I mean, I can see, I was reading the time frame and I can see it's already encroaching upon us, but I know you're shooting for a July 14th drop date, so hopefully we can be around there. I know, you know, we covered ourselves by saying 6 to 9 months, but
Yes.
you know, I really would encourage you to stay as close to that as possible, because we have some major decisions to make, and they all tend to revolve around us.
And it will take the cooperation of the county as well, so we're hoping that that will be done easily. They've promised to give us all the assistance that they can, so.
Thank you.
Item 7 is the unity of title release for 832, 834, 836 Northeast 3rd Avenue.
Mr. Mayor, this is an item we'd like to take out, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So we request to delete it.
Deleting it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Under the committee of the whole portion, if I may, I'd just like to, on behalf of Eric Stetton, who handles the personal injury litigation for the city, I'd like to request the scheduling, which will be arranged separately, of executive sessions on 2 personal injury lawsuits that arose out of an automobile accident. One is a lawsuit filed by Marcos Gate, and the other is the lawsuit filed by Marianela Perez. We'd just like to request the executive sessions to be held on those two lawsuits, and we'll arrange the scheduling as usual. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Finance Committee item, Hazen and Sawyer, off-site improvements for Walgreen.
Mr. Mayor, council members, item 1 and 2 are practically the same. If you recall, we got a grant from the state to do sewer improvements. And we are retaining the services of Hazen and Sawyer to do construction phase services. And this money, we're going to be upfronting the money, and the entities that are going to benefit from this, they're going to reimburse the city for these expenses.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Moved by the Vice Mayor. Is there a second?
Second, Mayor.
Second by Councilwoman Wallman.
And Mayor,
Question?
$750,000, this comes from the CDBG grant, correct? This is right.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Second item is Hazen and Sawyer, off-site improvement for the Levine Industrial Park. Same $750,000 community development block grant for public infrastructure improvement.
Yep, so moved.
Moved by the Vice Mayor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Garner. Question? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Purchase of vehicle and equipment for various departments and resolution.
Mr. Mayor, since last year we started trying to buy the entire fleet we need in a way where it's like a bulk to get the discount and take advantage of the state contracts or the contracts we are piggybacking on. The list of equipment you see here is all approved equipment, with the exception of 4 vehicles for the police department. But as far as the budget is concerned, we are within the budget allowed for the fleet. And of course, this is going to be financed over a certain number of years, 5 years. And like Brian said, he's trying to push for it up front, so we take advantage of the low interest rates versus waiting and purchase it individually, and the interest rate keeps escalating.
This is a budgeted item, and what's that, 1.5? 1.8?
The finance amount will be about 1.518, and there is an upfront purchase of 51,730.
Okay. Ms. Garner?
How long will these take to come in?
I'm sorry? There are various lead times as far as the vehicles, like these solid waste vehicles for the trash trucks. Those could be up to 120 days or longer. Those are extensive vehicles. Usually, typically, the police cars and stuff are within a 3 to 4 month range.
Mayor, I have a question.
Ms. Wall, are you finished, Ms. Garner? Ms. Wallman?
I see, we're leasing these, correct?
This is a lease to own, actually. It's a dollar buyout at the end. It's really a financial relief or burden for us for the 5 years. We do own the vehicles at all times. We have title to them.
Okay.
Our quarterly payments on this, if you would like, is $82,190.92 per quarter.
Okay, so it's a dollar buyout at the end of the
And a dollar buyout at the end, that's correct.
And has that worked out well for us in the past? I mean, do we find that the vehicles are still worthy enough, to be on the road? And
we life cycle a lot of the vehicles for 7 years, except for the police department, who have a little more stringent requirements due to the fact that they're pursuit vehicles and things of that nature. But most trucks and vehicles of that nature are 7 and higher for heavier, larger vehicles, depending on the use.
I think it's excellent. I think you've done a really good job, Brian, too, getting all this stuff together.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, council members, since we started this financing or lease program, it's really working very well for us. First of all, in terms of coming up with in the past, we used to purchase up front, come up with the entire cost. Now with all the purchases we've been doing since we had the financial recovery plan, we're doing it in a lease basis, and it becomes a part of the O&M for the department, so it gets to a point where the entire fleet is rotating, and we're able to afford it through our O&M.
Thank you, Mike. Any other comments? All in favor, say aye.
Excuse me, we don't
Opposed?
have a motion a second.
Moved by Ms. Garner, second by the Vice Mayor.
I think Brian had his hand up there.
Mayor, I just did want to add one more thing. We actually do pay forward on this, so it does keep within our budgetary. When we actually sign the contract for the lease, we begin payment on it, but they don't pay the vendors, obviously. They put it in escrow, but we can stay within our lease our budget parameters that we would have. We budgeted for 3 quarters, we would pay 3 quarters, so we keep in line with what we had budgeted.
Good. We have a Miami-Dade Breed and Seed Grant Award and Resolution in the amount of $14,120.
Did we vote on that?
The motion?
Move it.
Moved by the Vice Mayor, is there a second? Second by Ms. Garner. Question? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Losmer, Utility Committee items?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Shahada?
Mr. Chairman, council members, the first item is to retain the services of this engineering firm to do the SCADA system. This engineering firm has been doing work for us in the past, and it's really like a continuation of what they were doing, even though it went through the RFQ, and we request your approval to proceed with this. We have a requirement to meet a regulatory deadline of April 1st to have everything implemented. So we are on schedule, we're proceeding well, and we ask for your approval.
Thank you, Mike. Do I have a motion?
What's the date of completion? April 1st, you said?
April 1st.
Okay.
Do we have a motion? Second. All right, a motion by Vice Mayor, second by Councilman Hodge. Any further questions from council? No. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And do you have a couple add-on items for the surveying services?
Yes, sir. We have 2 items we'd like to add, and I'm sorry to bring it so late. We got it really very late, so we decided to bring it due to the time sensitivity with the substations and the timeline. And if you don't mind, I'd like to bring both items together because they're dealing with the same firm. Item number 2, this deals with the professional services for surveying. We went out for bids. This is quotes. This is the lowest quote from this surveying firm. We did work with them in the past. They are very good. And this deals with the tie line, the first one, professional services. The second one deals with the substation east, and that's for the transmission line also.
Question that I had, of course, obviously we have a really good local professional surveyor. Was he just way out of line, and that's why we're going with this one? Even with the local preference, if we kind of factored that in?
Actually, I defer to Brian for the number.
Yes, we did have a quotation for one of them. I think it was on the $12,000 item. Actually, on both, but we had a excess of $36,000 for one of the services. So it was way above the 5% local preference on that.
I just wanted, because I know good and well that I and at least 1 or 2 other of us, and maybe more, will probably be asked by that service provider, why not, and why is the business going to Miami? So
We should tell them why.
There's your answer, and we even built in the local preference premium, and that's way out of line. All right, thank you, Mike. Do we have a motion on both of those items?
I'll move it.
Second motion.
All right, motion by Vice Mayor, second by the Mayor for both of those items. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Mr. Shawley. You're welcome. That's all for the Utilities Committee, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Laws. Vice Mayor Bell, Education Committee item.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, we had good news with a little mix or a tinge of what I'm really not quite sure, but there was something going on at the Dade County Commission meeting last Thursday. I'm not quite sure what it was, but there was a very special dynamic going on, and EFBD was approved with a caveat, and basically it has to go back before the school board, and Evelyn Greer has to present it back to the school board, and they basically want to, I guess, hold harmless against litigation against the Dade County Commission in preference to school board, and I think Susan Travartan could probably explain that a little bit better, but it looks like it's just a formality and a technicality, but it does have to get approved by the school board, and then it is approved by the commission already based on the caveat. Susan?
Yes,
the county asked that the school board take on the duty to defend in the event there was litigation about this district, the creation of it and the operation of it. There also were some changes, including minor changes to the effective date based on some documentation that was missing and coming in shortly. We have not yet received the revised language, but we've been promised a chance to look it over when it is prepared by the county attorney, all of the parties who are involved. Once we have that language, we'll bring the agreement before you for your approval, because we'll finally have a fixed target for you to vote on.
Including boundaries.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, and along that line, I didn't bring the actual the boundaries with the proposed sites on it, but I do want to take note that the proposed boundaries of the EFBD with the 3 proposed sites, those sites are not approved. And I want to make that very, very clear, because that map is being passed out as if it were already approved by this council, and one of the sites for a school that's on that EFBD boundary map with 3 sites is in the Park of Commerce. So I want everybody to know up front that that has not been approved, that has not been approved by this council, and I even told the developer that the very same thing, that that is not approved and that that has to be discussed by this council. And I didn't think that would go very well, but I wanted everybody to know that. I want that to be on record, that that is not approved by this council, and that is certainly not approved by the education chair or the education committee. So I want to be on record saying that, and I'm sure they're going to really appreciate that. But being said, I wanted to go ahead. We're very excited about the EFBD. We know that when this is approved, when the school board goes ahead and goes with that additional caveat, and we're just hoping by faith that they will. By the way, the Dade County has some of the best attorneys and the best staff around, and the fact that they wanted to hold themselves harmless, I just thought it was a bit of a game. I'm really not sure, and it was brought up by Barbara Carey Schuler and actually seconded by Dennis Moss, so I was a little disappointed in that, but I don't know what their motives were. I guess they're trying to protect themselves. It was stated there that this has already been challenged and upheld in Osceola County, and actually it's been challenged more than once and it's been upheld, so we didn't see any problem of any particular challenges, but they felt that, I guess they wanted it as a little safety net for themselves. So that being said, I wanted to go ahead and move on, and I know it just says EFBD here, but I also want to bring up another item that I want council to go ahead and give us an approval to go forward on. And Charles LaPrade and I have been working for about 6 months on a project for a high school site. And we've shared that with the education committee, and we have shared that publicly when we had the workshop. The last education committee we've shared the last 2 times. And that site is 3 acres behind Harris Field. There is a 17-acre site that is there right now, and that is a future shopping center site. Charles and I have met on a few occasions with the owners of that site, and they have agreed to carve out 3 acres for us for a school site at a very reduced rate. And the rate that they agreed to sell it to the city is $250,000 an acre, and that is quite substantially less than the property is worth. So I want permission to pursue that and to proceed with that from this council to go on and purchase those 3 acres. The idea is a school site, and you think 3 acres high school, that sounds crazy, but the idea of the school site is that we would utilize all of the sports facilities and fields that are already in place, the YMCA gym, the pool, the basketball courts, the already existing football fields on Harris Field, the already existing baseball fields on Harris Field. I would like us to have a walk over US 1 where we could use the JD Red tennis courts, and I think there's also handball courts over there, and possibly work with the Dade County Public Library system, since there's a library right there. We also thought that that would be a fabulous site, because right in our backyard, right across the walkover is Miami-Dade College for those students that would be dual enrolling in the 11th and the 12th grade. So we thought that that would be very conducive to a very, very good a school that would be in the center of the city, that would kind of take some of the objections away from all the people who are screaming about all the schools that are going on the east side, the county as well. And I would like permission to go forward with that. And I do know that Charter Schools USA has already applied for and received a charter, and so that would be a possibility of working with Charter Schools USA on that. But I would like to bring forth a motion to that effect, giving permission to go forth. And Charles, I'd like you to add anything that you'd like to add to that at this particular time.
Vice Mayor, members of council, I think you've done a good job. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, but I don't think I could add much to that.
And Charles, you've been fabulous in this. Let me tell you, it wouldn't even be happening without Charles. I'm telling you, the contacts, the Fragas, and I shared at the Education Committee meeting with Charles how interesting it was, because when we were discussing the site, and he said it was the Fragas, I did a panel of mayors at a real estate expo representing the city of Homestead, and a gentleman walked up to me and said, you know, I own some land in the city. And I said, what do you own? He goes, oh, I own the site right behind Harris Field. And there we had, Charles and I had literally just discussed it that week, and here was the owner of the property approaching me at the panel of mayors. So I pulled him aside right then and there and said, do not sell that land until you talk to us. And so we've been talking ever since. And they have very graciously offered us a very reduced rate. And the idea is, I want to be clear with council, the idea is not that the city of Homestead buy the land and then go into the school building and the school running business. That's not the idea. I'd like to see the school, I'd like to see the city own the land and lease it back to a school. And the purpose of that is, as long as we own the land, it will always remain a school. It will always have to remain a school. And that is one of the conditions and the reason why I wanted to hold on to the land and so it could remain a school. And I know we have to discuss with the attorneys the legalities of putting out a request for proposal, whatever we have to do legally, we'll do. And the motion I would like to entertain at this point would be simply this. I would like to authorize staff to negotiate with the property owners either to acquire the 3 acres next to Harris Field for a high school site, or otherwise negotiate an arrangement that ensures a high school can be built at this location. And I worded that just in case something works out where it's not in the city's best interest to own it. I want to make sure that we work with somebody who will ensure that a school goes there on that site, because that's why we've been working so hard on those 3 acres. And that is the motion I would like to entertain if somebody would like to offer it.
I'd like to second that. Can I ask a question, please?
Yes. Thank you, Judy.
Charles, I just want to ask this question now before we have problems later, because I think it is a wonderful place to have a school. But you say that this property is going to be, or I think Ms. Bell said this property is going to be a shopping center, and it's a big piece of property, and I know it's a very expensive piece of property. Are we going to have any problems if there's any restaurants with liquor, I mean, I'm really worried about this, because I have an idea of some of the things that are going to be going in there, and they will be serving that, and I don't want to have a problem later on down the road, and I want to make sure if there's something legally we can do to...
We discussed that.
Restaurant separation is not just for schools, it's for all government property. So that'd be based on J.D. Red Park and the current Harris Field. The council has in their authority the ability to waive the distance requirements for any applicants within reason. I mean, what the code says is you can waive it only to the least amount necessary. So if they only need 300 feet, you can only waive it to 300 feet, but the ability is there to waive it. And that will be on a
done now, so that later on, if this council's not sitting here when that comes about, I want that on the record, that we're not anti, these developers are so nice to let us have this land at such a reasonable price. I want to make sure they know that we welcome, some of the things I've heard that may be coming in there.
And I don't think that staff who would have to give a recommendation one way or the other would be objectionable to it, especially in the restaurant type setting. Not a straight out bar, that's a different story. But in a restaurant type setting, that's never really been a problem. Okay. We also allow the service at the barn at the Harrisfield
Right.
Pavilion already on city property, so.
And that's usually in the evening hours, though, you know, when things aren't going on with
Exactly.
the children activities, but I just want to make sure.
Yeah. One thing about the site and looking at it, it is a fairly narrow rectangle, which allows for only truly 2 points of ingress and egress that can be really monitored. So it allows for the ability to watch where the kids move in and out from.
I'd be curious to see a render, see it on the map, you know, exactly where it is, but
Yes.
that was my only concern, Ms. Bell.
Judy, thank you so much for that. I do appreciate that, and that's funny because that was one of the very items that we did discuss, and we discussed with the Fragas, the owners of the property. That was one of my very questions
I
as
had no
well.
idea.
And so that's good. I do really appreciate that. And one of the things that I wanted to make sure everybody understands is that the alcohol that will be served in that shopping center will only be with restaurants. There will be no standalone bars, and so that's very, helpful to know that it's not going to be. Plus, the footprint of the school, because the school has to go up and is limited to 3 acres, it gives such a tight control on children going in and out of the school. So you're actually going to have a lot better control of children escaping, if you will. But I do appreciate the question very much.
And I enjoyed, I attended Linda's education committee, and I learned a lot. You know, I think we should all try to go to as many meetings as we can fit into our calendar. I know, I looked at my January calendar, and it was every day practically.
What would be the capacity, potential capacity for a 3-acre school? I know at the baseball site, we're looking at 1,600. You couldn't accommodate 1,600 on 3 acres versus 10 acres.
We looked at it more of building size, and Mr. Chandra, who's an architect and has done some work for the school board in the past, we feel that we could fit 160 to 200,000 square foot building in that neighborhood. What that equates to in student stations, I don't know, but I'm sure we are looking at the 1,000 to 1,200 mark, somewhere in there.
Yeah, we had talked about a 1,200 number, probably about 1,200 students.
Right.
And the fact is that if you look at all the schools, they're just single story and at the most 2-story, and we are going up at least 3 stories. So that does, enable us to add that. And because we're not having to, utilize any land for any fields or anything like that, those are all going to be there. That's going to be strictly school. And even auditorium you can use the gym. And we even talked about that. There wouldn't be the need for an auditorium.
And the other concern, Vice Mayor, is if the city is involved, I would certainly like some preference on Homestead residents at the school, if we're involved.
Absolutely.
That's the whole intention. Always has been.
Because, when I read the minutes, and I think the numbers were corrected, where it was publicly stated that 80% of the kids at the Keysgate Charter School were Homestead, and Charles, I think you said it was more like 40%.
Yes.
I think that's very valid. I think it's a valid observation, and it is something that we have discussed as well. And it's a very valid question. It's a very valid observation, and it's something that we are very much taking to heart, as to have, first and foremost, Homestead children, because it is going to be sitting, and that's another reason why I wanted it to be sitting on Homestead land, because I want it to be for Homestead kids first. And just think about how this is going to alleviate South Dade and Homestead. It's going to be right there in the middle. It's going to be like a line of schools, and it's going to be South Dade and the city school, and then the one on the other end. I want you to know that Charles and I did offer the Fragas that if they just gave us the land, we would call it Fraga High. So we really tried, and we actually tried to get it for nothing, but as generous as they weren't quite that generous. They're still businessmen.
I have one more question.
Certainly.
And it has to do with the remark that was made earlier about the 3 proposed sites. Are any of those proposed sites, for the record, approved?
Yes, the one in the Oasis PUD is an approved site. Although I've only...
What grades?
That is a K through 8, and that is a little bit north of East Lake, in the villages of, in the Keysgate there on 152. The other 2 sites are currently not designated school sites within the DRI. There are 2 designated school sites in the DRI. Those were not shown on the map. 2 other locations were shown.
What kind of approval would you need from Dade County Public School for this high school?
For this high school, for the city high school, that would be a charter approval.
So if we go with Charter USA, then it is, we already have a designation for it.
That's correct. I think it would be important with the to expedite matters that if an RFP is required, which we think it might be if we own the property, that probably be factored in on who has a charter or who can gain a charter within X amount of time to make sure that works quickly.
Which would ensure and guarantee that we could possibly have a school 06, 07 instead of 07, 08. David, would you like to weigh in on this at all? I see you chomping at the bit over there.
Right. Some of the constraints we have is that if the city owns land and the city causes a project to be built on that land, where the city is the owner of it, that may trigger certain public bidding requirements. On the other hand, if the city obtains property and conveys the property to someone who holds a charter and puts a deed restriction on the property specifying how the property be used, then it's really not a city development or city project, and the normal public bidding things would not apply. So, but I think within the framework of the authorization that you've requested, it gives enough flexibility to try to work out something, because while Charter School USA is unique in that it has the charter, it's not unique in terms of building of buildings, because operating is different than design and construction. That's not to say that that company doesn't have experience in that. They certainly do. So it's a matter of coming up with the best way to structure this transaction so that we can minimize the red tape of the purchasing process.
Thank you. And it's even not so much a matter of preference as it is speed.
Right.
And that's our concern, is to get a high school quickly and efficiently. And we can do it very efficiently without going through the 5 to 7 year process that the school board usually takes. But I still maintain that I would like the city to hold the land and lease the land back to the charter school. I think that's a win-win for the city. It's a win-win for the community as well as for the charter school as well as for the kids. I think it would be very wise for us to hold that land, even with deed restrictions. I think as long as we hold that land and we lease it back to the school, there's that lease income for the city, as well as it always will remain a school. Even, I know that can be done with a deed restriction.
Right, that can be done with a
but
deed
I'm more comfortable with us holding the land. I think you're more comfortable with us releasing the land. I'm more comfortable with us holding it. So if we could work that out, if we could possibly work that out, I think that's the way to go.
All right, we'll take a look at that.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? I think you may have just answered that. I was going to ask David, what would be the difference of Charter USA actually purchasing land and in the contract, the deed restrictions are put there? If it's not used for a school, they'll automatically turn over to the ownership of the city to be able to do whatever they do to make sure that there will be a school in place for it.
Right. In other words, the deed restriction would bind them that if they didn't develop it as a school, they'd have to reconvey the land back to the city. Or if they abandoned the school use, they'd have to reconvey it back to the city. That's a measure that would protect the city's interests. Because, a deed restriction is it's a matter of record. It runs with the land. It's something that remains enforceable. Does that answer your question? Because by us buying the land and then selling it, it doesn't constitute creating of a city project. Whereas if we own land and lease it out, it might be looked at by some as being a city project if our lease mandates that a particular building be built. So it's a different type of transaction. It may be looked at differently, but we'll look at that closely and see which way the item could be accomplished, expeditiously.
Thank you, David. Mike, and then Steve.
Madam Chair, Council members, it's my understanding from some of the presentations, if I understood it right, but David said, we could always verify the information. If a charter operator comes and for some reason they go, say, bankrupt or something, since they built that school from public money, so it will revert back to the school board. It will not, they cannot sell it. It goes back
That's
to
right.
the school board.
That's a good point. There are protections in the charters that Dade County School Board gives out, and I've seen those protections. For example, in the city of Aventura itself has its own charter school that the city sponsors, and in that city's agreement with the Dade County School Board, there's provisions that protect and assure that the building be used for the school purposes in case something happens in the future that no one expected.
And that's also in the EFBD as well, but I think it's a little bit different because the lands are donated.
On that one, there's no EFBD involved. It's just that the city itself acted as a sponsor for the charter school. It was the first city in Dade County to do that.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Losner?
Thank you. And I'll throw this out to you, Vice Mayor, to Charles, or whoever can first answer it. Look, are we on an expedited time frame, or are we under the gun from the owner of the property to get a contract out there and get it closed? Because, and Charles, you and I talked about this probably a year and a half ago, and I wasn't really sold on it then, but just for locational purposes. And the reason for my asking the question is that it's interesting that the Education Committee and this council apparently will dismiss the stadium site out of hand with no traffic study and no site plan presented, but we're ready to jump on board and buy this site without a traffic study and without a site plan. And so the purpose of my question is, I hope that if we get it under contract, we have a very lengthy investigation period to do those traffic studies and to do that site planning, because I just, Campbell Drive is the new main street of the city of Homestead. And if you're bringing half of those 1,000 kids from the east side developments and turning them against traffic on Campbell Drive to go to school every morning, it's not a whole lot of difference there than the problem we have on Kingman Drive right now. And, let's not run for political cover and bail out from the stadium side and jump from the frying pan into the fire on this one. So I guess I'll get back to my point and say, do the owners expect us to really jump out there and just go ahead and close this at that good price? And thinking out loud, has there been any discussion on, well, we're going to be deed restricted to having a school site in exchange for this half-price deal?
The developers haven't talked to us about deed restrictions of any kind.
Not the school developers, the owners.
Right, that's what I'm trying.
And we will talk about that when they're in the room then.
Yeah, the property owners would like to move expeditiously as possible. I would never recommend to council in any way that we jump out and grab something without some feasibility studies and some more review of it.
I think we have some serious due diligence to do before we decide to go ahead and do that.
But I don't think as staff that we could start doing that unless council says we would entertain the idea of purchasing.
No, I guess my point is, just because we have the opportunity to get it under contract at a good price, let's not go blindly into this.
Councilman Losner,
those same issues here as there are anywhere else.
You're absolutely correct, and absolutely we will do our due diligence. You're absolutely correct, but we can't even go that far. We can't even go the next step unless council authorizes us to begin looking into this. It would not be worth doing a traffic study, a feasibility study. There'd be no point in that if council says no. So if we get this step, you're absolutely right. And I think that if you still think that the stadium site is a good site after the joint land use study is finished, I think you should bring it back up.
Well, I'm not going to follow the military off the cliff and say we can't do anything out there.
But I'm saying, I think that if you still think that site is a good site, then let's open the door back up and discuss it.
Well,
Let's discuss it.
But I guess my question is, we've seen the Pembroke Pines model where there is joint use with city parks with charter schools. Is that generally what's contemplated here, or do we have restrictions as to what can happen on the park side of the site? It's going to be an adjoining thing, and I guess there's going to be joint use there.
Yeah.
Those are other things we're going to have to get through.
And there was an envisionment also that whatever operator leased that site would probably have to pay the parks a usage fee of some
Well,
kind.
and exactly, that's what's where the charter school dollars are supplementing the park and recreation budget, which
Absolutely.
is a very successful situation, admittedly under a little different funding scenario in Pembroke, but, you know, if that's where we're going here, that's fine. But, you know, and I'm wondering if the enhanced configuration of the Harris Field site by the acquisition of this property, I wonder if we found out if site planning would be better served by situating the building on a portion of the current Harris Field site. We need to be open to kind of swapping that out.
We've talked a lot about it.
Because there's some potential buildings and uses that maybe need to go away or be relocated, I'm sorry.
Steve, we're actually talking about keeping the traffic off. There's a back street, a back road, and then like you come in with the football fields and coming around. We're actually talking about keeping traffic off of the main road. But you're absolutely correct, there would have to be a traffic study done on that, but we've already talked about how we're going to divert the traffic outside, back into the back roads that are hardly used at all. Yes?
Just one of the constraints to keep in mind there is under the Dade County Charter, the Article 6, it restricts uses of parks, even municipal parks, so we would just have to watch out for that.
And that's peculiar to Dade that they don't have in Broward, is that correct?
That's correct.
Vice Mayor,
Yes.
if I may. I was waiting for your motion and for it to be passed, and then I know that we as within Parks and Recs, we have a lot of questions. And I think, you know, our due diligence should be, even, and I trust our city attorneys to make sure that we have all those contingencies in our contract, you know, so that we are protected with the traffic studies and the site plans, et cetera, et cetera. But we as Parks and Recs need to sit down as well, but that will be forthcoming. And, you know, I have questions about the walkover. I think it's a great idea, but I have questions as far as where's that money going to come from and things like that. But those are all bridges with the walkover bridge that we'll cross, you know, as we get to them. And I just feel that, I know I had called Charles and I asked Charles several questions about the traffic because I was concerned as well. And the way he explained it to me, I do believe that there can be a path, but we'll let the experts tell us that. So, yeah, I'm very much in favor of moving forward tonight to at least start to investigate this project.
One other note, too, that you all should know is that Charles and I also want to go talk to the county, and we want to present this to the entities in the county that would be concerned and give them the idea of what we're doing. We think they're going to be delighted because the county, and well, particularly the school board in the county, you know, every time we discuss the EFBD schools, they kept saying, where's your high school? Everything's K through 8. So we think that this is going to work to our benefit and work on our behalf. And I think any restrictions that are there with as limited to Dade County Parks usage, we think we could work within that and you know, overcome whatever obstacles there are. Because that's something that we discussed as well, even if we have to pay a small fee per student. And, you know, we know this charter school funding is similar to public school funding, as charter schools are public schools, but they're structured a little bit differently. And so those are all things that we are going to be forthcoming to everybody, but we can't even go that far until we get an approval to even begin the talks.
And if I might add to that, Vice Mayor, I'm going to be working closely with the county on the Air Force Reserve Base. I have a meeting scheduled. We have a meeting scheduled next week with Dade County Parks and the Sports Commission, and I think that might be a good time, Marlene, and Kurt from Parks Department, to just kind of ask a few basic questions and see, you know, just fill them out just a little bit. So we'll report back to your Education Committee and let you know what we can do to work with you on that.
Thank you. Well, is that close?
If it has been moved, I'll move it.
It's been moved in.
It's been moved and seconded.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. And the ayes carry. All opposed? I should have said that all opposed first, but I don't think there's any. The ayes carry. You should say all opposed. Thank you very much, and that's all the business I have. I appreciate it.
Any business from the audience? Any business from the audience? Well, that ends our meeting.
I have a question for Charles. While we're all here, I want to ask Charles a totally unrelated question. Do we have a hearing date for the next phase of our annexation process?
I have not been given a date of the Planning Advisory Board yet. No, sir.
Okay. That's all.
As soon as we know, we'll make that available.
Thank you all very much for coming.